The feeding chute jammed again, spilling purple slime across Danny Brooks' boots. He sighed and grabbed the scraper, working the blockage free while something with too many teeth hissed at him from the adjacent pen. Gateway Station Meridian never slept, and neither did the creatures passing through its lower levels. Dozens of species kept their mounts, pets, and cargo animals here during layovers, and someone had to keep them fed. Danny had drawn the short straw 3 years running. He was humming an old song his grandmother taught him when the station shuttered. Not the usual vibration from docking procedures, but something heavier. The overhead lights flickered. Several creatures in the pen started shrieking, that universal sound of prey recognizing a predator. Through the reinforced window, Danny watched something descend into the special docking bay. Wings that could wrap around buildings folded against a body covered in scales like hammered copper. Claws scored deep grooves into the landing platform. The head alone was larger than most shuttles, with horns that curved back like obsidian blades. A dragon. A real dragon. Danny had seen pictures, of course. Everyone in the known galaxy had heard of the Vraxes horde and their dragon king. But pictures did not capture the weight of such a presence. The way space itself seemed to bend around something so ancient and powerful. His supervisor burst into the feeding area, face pale and sweating. "Brooks, need you on special assignment. In the middle of feeding cycle for the Antarian cave crawlers. They get mean if you're late. Forget the crawlers. We've got Ravex himself out there." The supervisor jabbed a thumb toward the docking bay. "The Dragon King, he's here for the council summit and needs a handler." Danny blinked. "We have xenobiologists for that. They all refused, every single one." The supervisor wiped his forehead. "Dragons don't tolerate weakness or fear. Last handler who showed hesitation got incinerated. But you've got that thing where animals don't scare you. He's not an animal. Even better. Look, I'm desperate here. The diplomatic incident if we refuse service would be massive. You're good with the dangerous ones. Just keep him comfortable for a week until the summit ends." Danny looked at his slime-covered boots, then at the window where the dragon's shadow fell across half the station. "What's the pay bump?" 20% and first pick of shifts for a year. Done. 20 minutes later, Danny stood outside a reinforced chamber that had been hastily converted into something resembling appropriate housing for visiting royalty. The walls were 2 feet of durasteel. The temperature controls could simulate anything from Arctic freeze to volcanic heat. The space was large enough to fit 3 cargo haulers. It barely contained the dragon. Ravex lay coiled in the center, his body creating layers like a copper mountain range. His eyes opened as Danny entered, and they were like looking into twin suns, amber and gold with depths that held centuries. A voice crashed into Danny's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "Another servant. How disappointing. I expected someone more impressive." Danny set down the container of thermal rocks he'd brought, arranged them in a corner where heat distribution would be optimal. "Not a servant, sir. Just hired help. Name's Danny Brooks. You would speak to me so casually." The mental voice carried amusement now, dark and dangerous. "Do you not know who I am? Ravex, Dragon King of Vraxes Prime, ruler of the Horde, controller of 5,000 worlds, 7 times winner of the Great Hunt, 3 times champion of the Celestial Games." Danny checked the water dispenser, made sure it was functioning. "Your file was in the manifest. I read it. Yet you do not tremble." Danny paused, considering the question honestly. "Should I? You're here for a diplomatic summit. Pretty sure killing station personnel would complicate that. Could burn you to ash before your scream reached your throat. Could, sure, but will you?" Danny met those burning eyes directly. "Look, I've got 17 other pens to check after this. If you want to kill me, get it done so someone else can cover my shift. If not, I need to finish prep so you're comfortable." Silence stretched long enough that Danny thought he might have miscalculated badly. Then something like laughter rolled through his mind, deep as thunder. "Remarkable. Either you are the bravest creature I have met in centuries or the most foolish. Probably a bit of both." Danny adjusted the environmental controls, bringing the temperature up to match Vraxes standards. "I'll be back in 6 hours with the mineral supplements your species requires. Anything specific you need. Privacy. Silence. Respect. No tourist photos, no gossip to the other handlers." Danny headed for the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, it's an honor. Not many humans get to meet the Dragon King. After the human left, Ravx lay in the silence, replaying the interaction. 800 years of rule, thousands of subjects, countless beings who approached with fear, greed, or calculated ambition. But this small, fragile creature had walked in smelling of cleaning solution and alien waste, treated him like another job on a checklist. Refreshing. The second shift, Danny brought synthesized minerals and a cleaning kit. Dragons shed scales constantly and the accumulated debris itched. Most handlers used automated systems, staying far from teeth and claws. Danny walked right up to Ravex's flank and started scrubbing. "What are you doing?" The mental voice held surprise. "Maintenance. You've got dead scales building up along your spine. Causes irritation if left too long." Danny worked methodically, using a brush designed for heavy exotics. Had a Centaurian rock lizard last year, same issue. They get cranky when itchy. You dare compare me to an insult. Rocky was actually pretty sweet once you got past the attitude. Danny found a patch of particularly stubborn buildup and applied more pressure. This might feel weird. Ravx prepared to incinerate this presumptuous creature. The sensation started as irritation, then shifted to something unexpected. Relief. The human had found a spot that had bothered him for weeks, too small for his own claws to reach, too trivial to mention to his attendants back home. Lower, left side, Danny adjusted. "Here, yes." The word came out almost as a growl of satisfaction. They worked in silence for a while. Danny finished the spine, moved to the wings. The membranes were delicate despite their size, requiring careful attention. Most handlers would never dare touch them. "You fear nothing," Ravx observed. "Fear plenty." Station depressurization. Radiation leaks. My supervisor when I'm late with reports. Danny checked the wing membrane for tears. "But you haven't given me a reason to fear you specifically." "I could give you many reasons." "You haven't." Danny moved to the other wing. "That's what matters. Your species is known for aggression, for taking what you want through force." Danny laughed, the sound bitter. "Yeah, we've got that reputation. Deathworlders from a hell planet, tough as nails, dangerous when cornered." "All true enough, I guess. You shovel waste and clean scales. Someone has to." Danny finished the wing, stepped back to examine his work. "Not everyone gets to be a warrior or explorer. Some of us just keep things running." Ravx shifted, studying this human more carefully. Small as all humans were, weak by any objective measure. His bones would snap like dried twigs. Yet something in the way he moved spoke of quiet competence, of someone who had found purpose in work others dismissed. "Why do you tend animals?" Danny sat on a supply crate taking a break. "They're honest. A creature is hungry, scared, angry, whatever, they show it. No politics, no lies. You treat them right, they respond. Simple. Nothing is simple, fair point." Danny pulled out a canteen, took a drink. "But it's simpler than people. Lost my parents when I was 14. Transport accident. Ended up here because I needed work and I was good with the difficult ones." "The difficult ones?" "Yeah, the biters. The screamers, the ones everyone else was afraid of." Danny smiled slightly. "They just needed someone to see past the teeth and claws. Usually they were just scared or in pain." Ravx considered this. "And you believe this of me, that beneath the Dragon King is merely a frightened creature?" "No." Danny met his gaze again. "I think you're exactly what you appear to be. Powerful, ancient, dangerous, but maybe also tired." Observation landed like a physical strike. Ravx felt his mental defenses slam into place automatically. "You overstep." "Sorry." Danny stood, gathering his supplies. "I'll keep things professional." But the human's words echoed after he left. "Tired." When had anyone last acknowledged that? His generals spoke of strength and conquest. His mates bore offspring to continue the bloodline. His advisors provided strategy and counsel. None asked if the weight of 800 years ever grew heavy. The third shift, Danny arrived to find Ravx awake and watching the door. "I wish to know more of Earth," the Dragon King said without preamble. Danny set down the feed supplements. "What do you want to know?" "Your world is classified as a death planet. Extreme gravity, aggressive wildlife, geological instability. Yet you seem," Ravx searched for the word, "gentle. Earth's tough, yeah, but that's not all it is." Danny started his routine maintenance checks. "There are places where snow falls so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat. Forests where the trees are older than most civilizations. Oceans deep enough to hide secrets we've never found. You speak of it fondly. It's home. Or was. Danny adjusted the thermal rocks. Can't afford the transport back often. Maybe someday. Tell me of these forests. So Danny did. He talked about camping with his grandmother in the Appalachian Mountains, the way morning mist hung between the trees like curtains, how deer would emerge at dawn, cautious but curious, the smell of pine and earth after rain. Ravax listened, fascinated despite himself. Most species spoke of their homeworlds in terms of resources or strategic value. This human described beauty as though it mattered more than strength. Your grandmother taught you this appreciation. She taught me a lot. How to track animals without frightening them, which plants were safe to eat, how to sit so still that birds would land on your shoulders. Danny smiled at the memory. She said every creature had something to teach if you paid attention. Sounds wise. Was, past tense. The pain in those words was old but present. She's why I'm good at this job. She showed me how to listen. I have not been listened to in a very long time, Ravax admitted quietly. Obeyed, yes. Feared, certainly, but not listened to. Danny finished his work, then did something unprecedented. He walked up to Ravax's massive head and placed his hand against the scales near the dragon's jaw. The touch was gentle, respectful. I'm listening, he said simply. For the first time in centuries, the Dragon King had no response. The fourth shift, Ravax was already talking before Danny cleared the entrance. I united the Vraxes clans when I was barely past my first century. 17 warring factions, each convinced they should rule. I was not the strongest or the largest, but I was the most determined. Danny set down his equipment and settled in to listen while working. This had become their routine. Ravax talked while Danny maintained the chamber, and somehow the combination felt natural. I challenged each clan leader to single combat, killed 9, the rest bent knee. The dragon's eyes were distant, seeing the past. For 300 years we expanded, a new world every cycle. The horde grew vast and mighty. Sounds exhausting, Danny said, checking the water filtration system. It was glorious. If you say so. Danny made a note that the filters needed replacement soon. But glory doesn't mention the parts where you're tired or hurt or wondering if it's worth it. Ravax huffed, smoke curling from his nostrils. You have a talent for finding the uncomfortable truth in everything, gift and a curse. Danny moved to inspect the temperature regulators. So you conquered 300 worlds. Then what? Then I ruled trade agreements, defense pacts, internal disputes that required judgment. I have 7 mates who despise each other, 43 offspring competing for favor, generals who plot in shadows. Advisors who tell me what they think I wish to hear. Sounds lonely. I am the Dragon King. I am never alone. Danny glanced at him. Being surrounded by people isn't the same as not being lonely. Silence fell between them. Ravax watched this small human work with practiced efficiency and found himself wanting to share truths he had never voiced. There are days when I wish to simply fly, not to patrol borders or inspect territories, just to fly because the wind feels good beneath my wings. The admission felt dangerous, but I am the king. I cannot simply fly for pleasure while my people need guidance. Not because that would be weakness. Danny paused his work. Says who? Says 800 years of tradition. Says the code of the horde. Says every dragon who ever looked to me for strength. Ravax's tail lashed once, agitated. If I show weakness, others will challenge. If I am challenged, I must kill or be killed. It is our way. Sounds like a terrible way to live. Is the only way I know. Danny finished his inspection and sat on his usual supply crate. Can I tell you something? It's going to sound stupid coming from someone like me. Speak. You're strong enough to be gentle. That's not weakness. That's being so secure in your power that you don't have to prove it constantly. Danny leaned forward. The meanest creatures I've worked with are usually the scared ones. They lash out because they're afraid if they don't, someone will see they're vulnerable. You believe I am afraid. I think you're exhausted from never being allowed to be anything except strong. Danny met his gaze. That's not the same thing as being afraid, but it's still sad. Ravax could have ended this conversation, this human, in an instant. Instead, he found himself asking, when did you last feel safe? The question seemed to surprise Danny. He thought about it carefully. Honestly, right now, working here with you, you could kill me easy, but you won't. That's a kind of trust I don't get often. I find that strange. You should fear me. Maybe, but you've never given me a reason to. You've been patient with my questions. You've shared your thoughts. You've let me do my job without making it harder than it needs to be. Danny smiled. That's more courtesy than I get from most of the staff around here. You set a low bar for courtesy. Be surprised how often people can't clear it. Danny stood, gathered his supplies. I've got to check on the Antarian crawlers. They've been fighting again, and I need to separate them before someone loses a limb. You will return, same time tomorrow, unless the universe explodes or my supervisor finds someone braver. Danny headed for the door, then turned back. Hey, Ravax. Yes, thanks for talking with me. It's nice having actual conversations with someone who isn't just complaining about shift schedules. After the human left, Ravax lay in the silence and realized something unsettling. He was waiting for tomorrow. Not because of duty or necessity, but because he genuinely wanted to see Danny again. When had that last happened? When had he last looked forward to someone's company rather than simply tolerating their presence? The Dragon King closed his eyes and allowed himself a moment of vulnerability. Just a moment, alone in his chamber where no one could witness it. He was lonely. He had been lonely for longer than he could remember. And somehow, a human stable hand with cleaning supplies and honest observations had become the first person in centuries to notice. The fifth shift brought a change. Danny arrived with his usual equipment but also carrying a small device. He set it on the ground and pressed a button. Music filled the chamber, soft and melodic, strings and woodwinds in an arrangement that felt ancient. What is this? Ravex asked. Earth music. Classical style, couple 100 years old. Danny began his work. I thought you might like it. Gets boring with just silence and conversation. Music wove through the air, complex and beautiful. Ravex found his breathing synchronizing with the rhythm without conscious thought. It had been centuries since he heard music meant for enjoyment rather than ceremony. It is pleasant, he admitted. Glad you like it. My grandmother used to play this when I was small. Helped me sleep when the nightmares got bad after my parents died. They worked in comfortable silence, the music bridging the gap between species and experience. Danny noticed Ravex's tail swaying slightly in time with the melody and smiled to himself. Can I ask you something personal? Danny said after a while. You have earned that right. When's the last time someone touched you with affection? The question hung in the air. Ravex considered lying, then decided this human deserved honesty. I cannot recall. Mate's touch for breeding purposes. Offspring touch to show submission or request favor. Warriors touch in combat, but affection. That concept is not part of dragon culture. That's awful. Simply is. Danny finished cleaning a section of scales, then did something that would have gotten any other being killed. He leaned against Ravax's side. His small form barely noticeable against the dragon's bulk and simply rested there. What are you doing? Ravex asked quietly. Giving you a hug, sort of. You're too big for a proper one, but this is close enough. This is inappropriate. Probably want me to stop, Ravex considered. The touch was gentle, carrying no demand or expectation, just presence, connection, the warmth of another living being offering comfort freely. No, he said finally. You may continue. They stayed like that for several minutes, human and dragon, while the music played. The summit began 2 days later. Danny stood in the observation gallery, watching through shielded glass as representatives from 40 species gathered in the main council chamber. The room was a marvel of diplomatic engineering, with environmental sections for species requiring different atmospheres, gravity adjustments, and translation systems that handled everything from verbal speech to pheromone communication. Ravax entered last, as befitted his status. The chamber fell silent. He was magnificent in his full glory, scales polished to mirror brightness, wings mantled to show their full span. Every inch the Dragon King who commanded fleets and burned worlds, but Danny saw something others missed. The slight tension in his shoulders, the way his tail stayed coiled close instead of loose and relaxed. Ravax was performing, and the performance cost him. The session began with territorial disputes. 3 species claimed ownership of a mineral-rich system on the border between Horde space and the Coalition territories. Normally, Ravax would have simply declared the system his and dared anyone to contest it. Instead, he listened to each claim carefully. asked questions, proposed a sharing arrangement that would benefit all parties. The chamber erupted in confused murmuring. This was not the Dragon King they knew. During the recess, Danny made his way down to the diplomatic preparation rooms. He found Ravex alone, his massive form coiled in a space too small for proper comfort. "You did good in there," Danny said. "I showed weakness. You showed wisdom. There's a difference." Danny climbed onto a chair to reach high enough to check Ravex's scales. He had noticed some irritation earlier. "How are you feeling?" "Confused. Uncertain. These are not emotions I am accustomed to experiencing." Ravex lowered his head so Danny could reach the problem area. "My own generals are questioning my judgment." Change is scary, especially when you've done things one way for 800 years. Danny found the irritated patch and applied soothing ointment he had brought. "But you're trying something new. That takes guts. Or it takes the influence of a human stable hand who does not understand the complexities of galactic politics. Maybe. But you understand them and you're still choosing this path. I'm just the guy who pointed out you had options." A voice boomed from the doorway. "Majesty, we must speak." Danny turned to see another dragon, smaller than Ravex but still massive, scales dark as obsidian. 3 others stood behind him, all wearing the markings of military commanders. "Lord Graxus," Ravex acknowledged. "What troubles you?" "This." Graxus gestured with one claw at the council chamber. "This softness. You negotiate with species we could conquer in days. You offer compromise when we could simply take what we want. And you bring—" his eyes fixed on Danny with contempt. "A pet human to our most important negotiations. Danny is my guest and advisor. Is a child who shovels waste." Graxus moved closer, his presence threatening. "The horde grows concerned, Majesty. They wonder if their king has lost his fire." "I have lost nothing." Ravex's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I have gained perspective. From a human." Another dragon spoke, female with silver-touch scales. "They are Deathworlders, yes, resilient and stubborn. But they are not wise in the ways of power." Danny felt very small, surrounded by 4 massive predators debating his worth. He also felt something else. Anger. "With respect," he said, voice steady despite his racing heart. "You're confusing power with strength." Every dragon eye fixed on him. Danny swallowed but continued. "Power is making people do what you want through fear or force. Strength is making them want to work with you because they trust your judgment. The Dragon King has more actual strength right now than he's ever had because he's strong enough to admit there might be better ways than burning everything." "Dare lecture us on strength?" Graxus took a step toward Danny. Heat radiated from his scales. "I could end you with a breath, probably, but that would just prove my point." Danny stood his ground, legs shaking but voice firm. "Real power doesn't need to threaten every 5 seconds. Real power is so secure it can afford to be kind." "Graxus, stand down." Ravex's command cracked like a whip. "The human speaks wisdom you lack. He has shown me that fear and respect are not the same thing. Our horde has been feared for centuries. Perhaps it is time we were respected instead." The dragons exchanged looks. Graxus bowed stiffly. "As you command, Majesty, but the generals will want assurances that you have not gone soft. Then they will have to trust their king's judgment, as they have for 800 years." After the dragons left, Ravex looked at Danny with something like wonder. "You were terrified." "Absolutely. You spoke anyway. Someone had to. They were treating you like you'd done something wrong by trying to be better." Danny's hands were still shaking. "That made me mad. You defended me." Ravex said it as though testing the concept. "You, a human who cannot even breathe fire, defended the Dragon King against his own generals." "Yeah, well, you're my friend. Friends back each other up." "Friends." Ravex tasted the word. "I have not had a friend since I was young. Power makes friendship difficult." "Doesn't have to." Danny climbed down from his chair. "We're friends and you're about as powerful as they come. That is because you are either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish." "You keep saying that. I'm starting to think it's both." Ravex laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "I am beginning to think you are correct." The next council session was tense. Word had spread about the confrontation between Ravex and his generals. Species who had been prepared to compromise now watched carefully, wondering if the Dragon King would revert to his old ways. Danny watched from the observation gallery as a small, insect-like being approached the speaking platform. Her species, the Kyrex, held territory that bordered the horde on three sides. They had been preparing their defense forces for years, expecting eventual invasion. "Dragon King," she began, voice translator rendering her clicks and whistles into standard speech. "My people live in constant fear. Your fleets patrol our borders. Your scouts map our worlds. We know invasion is inevitable. We ask only for time to evacuate our civilians before you attack." The chamber went silent. This was it, the moment that would define whether Ravax had truly changed or merely been playing a longer game. Ravax stood, his full height making even the massive chamber feel small. Danny could see the old instincts warring in him. The easy path would be intimidation. The traditional response would be to neither confirm nor deny the accusations, letting fear do the work for him. "Ambassador Kyrex," Ravax began slowly, "I will not lie and claim the Horde has never considered expansion into your territories. We have. Your worlds are strategically valuable, rich in resources." Several species representatives tensed, preparing for the declaration of war. "However," Ravax continued, "I have recently been reminded that there are different forms of strength. Conquest is simple. Any being with sufficient force can take what they want, but building something lasting requires wisdom I have perhaps lacked." He moved closer to the Kyrex ambassador, lowering his massive head to her level. "I propose instead a treaty. Your people have advanced medical technology our species lacks. We have defensive capabilities that could protect your borders from other threats. We could become allies rather than enemies." The Kyrex froze, antennae quivering in shock. "You would ally with us, we who cannot stand against you." "Perhaps that is precisely why alliance makes sense. Your people offer what we lack, and we offer protection. Is that not stronger than simple conquest?" Danny felt pride swell in his chest. Ravax was doing it, actually doing it. Then the explosion hit. The chamber's outer wall erupted inward, shielding failing in a cascade of sparks and debris. Through the breach, three dragons entered, scales blackened for stealth, eyes burning with fanatic purpose. "Death to the weak king," one roared. "The Horde demands strength." They moved with military precision, targeting structural supports. Danny saw it instantly. They were not trying to kill everyone. They were specifically engineering a collapse that would bury Ravax under tons of debris while giving themselves time to escape. Security forces responded, but too slowly. The assassins had timed this perfectly. Another support beam groaned, began its fatal descent directly above where Ravax stood, still protecting the Kyrex ambassador with his bulk. Danny did not think, could not think. His body moved on instinct born from 3 years of working with dangerous creatures. He vaulted the observation railing, using a damaged strut to swing down to the council floor, momentum carrying him forward. He hit Ravax's side at full sprint, pushing with everything his human body could generate. It was like trying to move a mountain. But the Dragon King had been leaning forward, balance committed to protecting the ambassador, and Danny's unexpected force from the side was just enough. Ravax shifted 6 inches to the left. The support beam fell where his head had been. Danny, unable to stop his momentum, went directly into the beam's path. Metal designed to hold up a space station caught him full across the chest and left side. He heard his arm snap, felt ribs crack like dry twigs. The pain was enormous, then distant, then gone as shock took over. He was on the ground. Someone was screaming, maybe him. Then Ravax's face filled his vision, those amber eyes wide with something Danny had never seen there before. Terror. "No, no, no, no." The mental voice was breaking, fragmenting. "Foolish human, brave, stupid, impossible human. Why?" Danny tried to answer but only managed to cough. Blood, that was not good. He wanted to say something reassuring, something brave. Instead, he whispered, "Same reason you started listening, because it was right." The world was getting dark around the edges. Danny was distantly aware of medical teams rushing in, of Ravak's roar shaking the entire station, of heat that should have incinerated everything as the Dragon King's rage manifested. But all Danny could focus on was that expression in Ravak's eyes. His friend was hurting, and that seemed worse than anything happening to his own body. "It's okay," he managed. "You're worth it." Then the darkness took him, and Danny knew nothing more. Ravak held the broken human body with a gentleness that belied his size. Around him, his fire had consumed the assassins in seconds, leaving only ash. Security forces stood frozen, unsure whether to approach the Dragon King or flee. Graxus landed nearby, having heard the commotion. He approached cautiously, saw his king cradling the human, saw the wetness on those ancient scales. "Majesty, He saved me." Ravak's voice was breaking. "This small, fragile creature threw himself at a falling building to save me, and I cannot save him." Medical teams were setting up emergency equipment, but everyone could see the extent of the damage. Human bodies were not designed to survive what Danny had just endured. And that was when the Dragon King, ruler of 5,000 worlds, leader of the greatest empire in this arm of the galaxy, began to cry. He had not cried since he was a hatchling 500 years ago, had forgotten he still could, but tears fell now, smoking against his heated scales, falling onto Danny's pale face. "Please," Ravak whispered to any power that might listen. "Please, he showed me how to be better. Do not take him now, not like this." Behind him, the entire council watched in stunned silence as the Dragon King wept over a stable hand, and understood that something fundamental had shifted in the galaxy. The medical bay existed in a state of controlled chaos for 3 days. Human physiology was understood well enough, but the injuries Danny had sustained pushed the boundaries of what medicine could repair. His left arm was crushed beyond saving. 4 ribs were broken. Internal bleeding had been catastrophic before they got it under control. Ravak refused to leave. He coiled around the entire medical suite, wings spread to create a barrier between Danny and the rest of the universe. Doctors worked around him because moving the Dragon King was not an option, and frankly, no one dared try. On the second day, Graxus approached. He had been part of the faction that wanted Ravak to return to traditional ways. Now he stood at the edge of the dragon's wings, uncertain. "Majesty, the human, he still lives." "Barely." Ravak's eyes never left the medical monitors. "They say the next hours are critical." "I did not understand," Graxus said quietly, "what he meant to you." "I did not fully understand either until I thought I would lose him." Ravak's tail twitched, agitated. "He is my friend, Graxus, my only true friend in 800 years. He asked nothing of me, expected nothing, simply offered companionship and honesty. For what it is worth, I am sorry. The assassins, they came from the traditionalist faction, but I swear I had no knowledge of their plans." "I believe you. You are many things, old friend, but you are not a coward who hides behind assassins." Ravak finally looked at his general. "This is what I have learned from Danny. That strength without compassion is merely cruelty. That power without wisdom is just destruction. He, who could not harm the smallest of us, showed more bravery than 1,000 warriors." Graxus bowed his head. "The Horde will hear of this, of the human who saved the Dragon King. Songs will be written." "If he lives to hear them," Ravak's voice cracked, "if he lives." On the third day, Danny's eyes opened. The first thing he saw was copper scales, and amber eyes filled with relief so profound it was painful to witness. "You're still here," Danny managed, his voice rough from intubation. "Where else would I be?" Ravak moved his massive head closer, gentle as a whisper. "My friend was injured. I could not leave." "The summit." "Suspended pending investigation," and my recovery. Your recovery. When you hurt, I hurt. Is that not what friendship means? Ravak studied the medical equipment keeping Danny stable. They say your arm cannot be saved. Danny looked at his left side, saw the shattered limb held together by medical scaffolding. Worth it. How can you say that? You are permanently damaged. You're alive. The summit can continue. The Kyrix ambassador was protected. That's what matters. Danny smiled weakly. Besides, I still have one good arm. Plenty of creatures I can handle one-handed. You are not returning to stable work. Ravak said it with absolute finality. You are going to stay with me as my advisor and companion, unless you refuse, which I suppose you have earned the right to do. Advisor, I'm a kid who cleans pens. You are the person who taught a dragon king how to be better. That makes you qualified for far more than you realize. Ravak's expression softened. Please, I find I do not wish to return to a life without your friendship. Danny felt tears prick his eyes. Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Over the following weeks, as Danny healed, the summit reconvened. The story of what happened had spread across the galaxy. The Dragon King who cried, the human who sacrificed himself, the friendship that changed everything. Ravak's proposal to the Kyrix became a template. One by one, species who had feared the Horde began signing mutual defense and trade agreements. Borders that had been closed for centuries opened. Cultural exchanges began. The traditionalist faction in the Horde grumbled but could not argue with results. The Horde was growing stronger, not through conquest but through alliance. Other species no longer plotted their defenses against dragon fleets. They requested meetings, offered cooperation. Graxus himself admitted, grudgingly, that perhaps the human had been right about strength. 6 months later, Danny stood beside Ravak in a formal diplomatic reception. His left arm was gone, replaced with a prosthetic that would never feel quite right. But his right hand rested on Ravak's scales in their customary gesture of friendship, and that felt exactly as it should. Do you regret it? Ravak asked quietly while dignitaries mingled around them. Your arm will never fully heal. You will carry this injury forever. Danny looked up at his friend, at the Dragon King who had learned gentleness and the strength it required. I got to make a difference. Got to help someone I care about. Got to see the galaxy become a little bit better. And I got a friend who's basically a flying mountain of scales and fire. What's there to regret? You could have died. But I didn't, and look at what we built because I lived. Danny gestured at the gathered species, former enemies now discussing cooperative projects. This is worth any price. Ravak closed his eyes, pressing his massive head gently against Danny's shoulder. You have taught me many things, small human, but the most important is this. Some bonds transcend power. Some friendships are worth more than empires. And sometimes the smallest acts of courage echo across the stars. Plus I got you to cry. Pretty sure nobody else can claim that. You are never going to let me forget that, are you? Not even a little bit, Danny grinned. That's what friends are for. Later that evening, after the reception ended, they stood together on an observation deck watching stars drift past. Ravak had one wing spread low, creating shelter, while Danny sat beneath it with a cup of tea. You know what's funny? Danny said. A year ago I was cleaning pens and dreaming about maybe saving enough to visit Earth. Now I'm advising the Dragon King and helping reshape galactic politics. Life takes unexpected turns. The best kind. Danny sipped his tea. Thanks for taking a chance on the weird human who wasn't scared of you. Thank you for seeing past the Dragon King to the person underneath, for teaching me that being strong enough to be gentle is not weakness. Ravak's tail curled around Danny protectively. You are my friend, my true friend. That is a treasure beyond any hoard. They sat in comfortable silence, human and dragon, bound by a friendship that had changed the galaxy. Around them, the universe turned, full of possibility and hope, built on the foundation of one simple truth. Sometimes the smallest person with the kindest heart can make the mightiest warrior cry. And in those tears, new worlds are born. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.